Do you see?
Mm-hmm.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else want to look? So this is a little, and if I suck up too much water here, okay, well then I'll bleed it over here on the piece of paper. But I still have that color on it. I haven't washed the brush. Okay, that's for the paper towel. But I can go back and pick it up where I make sure it's not too much. And then put a little, some of the highlights on really quickly. And the way the light is cast, it's showing you where the highlights are. I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. You don't have to guess. Adding a little more of this off-white. It's an off-white. It's not true white. So I'm putting some on the tip of his chin. I can see that there's a little on the lip, the tip of his nose, and the either nair, and then a little on his cheekbones. Okay. Not doing it particularly carefully because it's nowhere near being complete. Then I see that, I don't really like this. It looks too pink to me. Okay, fine. So maybe I'll add a little more yellow to what I just did. And that's just the comfort level. But you have this palette. You see how many different shades I've made in just a few minutes, and you can work back and forth. And it's still a usable palette. I could use this same thing for an hour, easily. So now this is a lot lighter, and I want him to... And the whole time I'm holding the figure with both hands. The one with the paintbrush is touching the figure, so the only thing that's moving is the brush. The figure's not moving, my hand's not moving, it's just the brush. So you have a really, really stationary object that you're painting. Why haven't I painted the eyes? Well, it's under a visor, so, I usually... When I'm viewing a figure, I'm not going to look at it upside down. I mean, we could still paint the eyes. It's not a problem.
Just a little bit harder.
A little harder, and
yes,
for
paint the eyes.
Okay, you want to paint the eyes? Okay.
Always paint the eyes. Get at them, and they're right. Paint them.
Okay.
It's always good because somebody's going to look underneath the visor. Yeah.
There you go. You're right.
Make sure when you're not looking, they're going to pick it up and look.
So what is your routine for eyes? What do you start with first? The white, obviously the whites.
No, actually, I use a more dilute, darker color, so it'll track into the recesses, so I can see what the sculptor has sculpted. The upper eyelid, the lower eyelid, and the actual eye itself. And here, I'll just grab a little black. I like using black. Mixing it black or dark blue, mixing it with some of the other colors. So for the eyes, I'm going to use a little black and brown, maybe a little red, maybe not. Depends what it looks. I don't like that look, I won't do that. So I'll just do a little black and brown. Okay, I'm just lifting up a little paint. And you can see the plastic right through, so it's not completely opaque. But it doesn't need to be. I'm not trying to make it opaque, I'm trying not to make it opaque. It's just, this is how I experienced it, and I just painted the way with the material that I had. I wasn't trying to get it to look like this or be like this. It's just how it turned out. That's really important. Don't try to make it a certain way. Just, you got paint on the brush, it's going to paint. Okay, so I'll go back and I can easily, it's almost like drawing. It's like a pencil. There's not so much paint on the brush that it's going to spill over, and it's not so little that it won't come off the brush. And if you're not sure, you have your paper right here. I'm not really sure if there's enough paint on, right? And I could, oh, okay, there's paint right there. If you look at this, you can see how fine a line. I mean, you can whatever you want to do. Okay, I'm basically whatever drawing with the paintbrush. Okay.
What type of brush do you like and what size?
This is an O. I use like O or double O. I used to use like 18O and things like that. I don't need to do that. So I'm now taking off. There's a little, you can see how it went from pretty dark to pretty light, dark color. I go back to my original mixture here, and it's still moist enough that I can keep using it. And if it's not, I just add a little water to reconstitute it. And then I just go back and outline the eye. Okay. And it's, again, it's just drawing. It really is. And then I might go along some of the creases to exaggerate it. Even if it's black and darker, it's okay because you're going to put more paint on it and blend it. So these eyes are kind of, the way he sculpted it, it's not the easiest eye to paint because it's more of a gouge than an eye.
Yeah.
So
You get a lot of figures like that.
right.
Doesn't have the proper socket.
Yeah, you don't have the rounded eye.
It's just
perfect. And
Right.
With an eyeballs messed
There's
up.
no orb below.
No orb, thank
Right.
you. He just put the sculpting tool and just pressed in. And so you have the
Right.
upper eyelid, the lower eyelid, and then just a gouge.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a little challenging. So now, if you look at it, the paint's pretty much dry, and it looks pretty sloppy. But if you look at it, the paint's dry. So I can put other colors on it, and you'll see, if you take a look at it now, and I add a little red, I can use red directly and dilute it enough, and just touch on areas. And the same way the paper drew the diluted paint off the brush, those areas on the face that I put the brush against, they're going to draw that off. Okay? So you're not really blending. You're not trying to blend two different areas, darker or lighter, with two wet areas. You're not trying to blend those two together. You just have areas where there are different shades, and you're adding these shades, and as the paint penetrates, it bleeds, and that will be your transition. Like if you're watering a lawn, right, wherever that hose hits the soil, it's the heaviest, and then it kind of bleeds to the circumferentially. So I'm going to add a little red and white and yellow. And it may look pretty exaggerated, like this pink out here on the palette. It's pretty bright, it's almost like fuchsia. But you dilute it enough, and you check on your paper palette, if that's what it is, or bleeder, and you see what you're getting. And then I guess I'll make his cheeks a little pinkish, okay? And you can still see the darker areas under it. So again, it's not going to be completely opaque. Let's see how this guy turns out. And he's actually, once you add that, it really starts becoming more recognizable as a face. So you have the darker reds or browns in the recesses, and the lighter whitish peach tone on the highlights, and then this little pinkish is starting to serve as a transition. Even at arm's length, you can kind of start to see it a little bit.